My name is Lewis, and 2 weeks ago, I accepted a late shift janitorial job at a newly opened research facility in the mountains. I'm not a scientist, not an engineer, just a person trying to pay rent. The job came with free housing in a modest apartment near the site, plus a decent salary. I figured the isolation would be peaceful. I figured wrong. When I arrived, a stern-faced supervisor named Dr. Fowler handed me a small booklet labeled Protocols for Maintenance Staff. He said nothing else, just watch me read it. At first, I assumed it was typical housekeeping stuff, like how to handle cleaning chemicals or dispose of trash. But as I skimmed through, I realized it was something very different. Keep your keycard on you at all times. Ignore your reflection if it appears late at night. Never investigate strange noises on the 4th floor. These instructions were more than guidelines. They felt like warnings. My first night on the job proved that I should take every word seriously. I started my shift at 10 p.m. The hallways were dimly lit, and though modern in design, the place gave me an uneasy feeling. It was silent but not calm, as if the entire structure hummed with a barely noticeable energy. The facility had 3 above-ground floors and 2 sublevels for labs. My job was to clean floors, empty trash bins, and do general upkeep. The entire time, I kept glancing at that small booklet of rules. As I worked, I noticed a security camera in almost every corner. I wasn't sure if the cameras were installed for safety or to monitor employees like me. Around midnight, I heard footsteps echo in the corridor behind me. Thinking it might be a fellow staff member, I looked over my shoulder. No one was there. I reassured myself it was the noise of the ventilation system or some trick of my own imagination. But something in the air felt off. After I emptied the trash in a corner office, I saw my reflection in the window. I could have sworn I blinked, but my reflection did not. I recalled the note in the booklet about ignoring any strange reflections. Heart pounding, I lowered my head, refused to stare, and walked away. That night, I managed to get through my tasks without encountering anything more unsettling. But the unnerving silence, flickering lights, and my own anxious thoughts left me so uneasy I barely slept after my shift. The next evening, I read the entire list of rules again, this time memorizing each one. There were 8. Even if they seemed ridiculous, I decided to follow them, if only to keep my mind at peace. Below are those 8 rules, along with what I've learned through my own experiences so far. Rule 1. Sweep the hallways from bottom to top. Start with the basement, then move up each floor in order. Never reverse the cleaning order. This rule was printed in bold letters at the top of the handbook. My first few shifts, I didn't understand why it mattered. Hallways are hallways, right? But on my 3rd night, I was behind schedule and decided to start with the 2nd floor. It seemed harmless enough, less dusty than the basement, so it was quicker. About halfway through mopping near a closed lab door, I heard an odd rumble. The lights flickered, and the entire corridor seemed to tilt. 1 second I was fine, the next, the floor looked like it extended much farther than it actually did, as if the building had stretched. My balance wavered, and the corridor in front of me seemed to go on forever. Panicked, I ran back to the stairwell, stumbling on my mop. Once I got back to the basement, the sensation stopped. Ever since that incident, I've swept from the bottom level up without fail. No more illusions, no more extended hallways. The facility itself felt stable again, at least for the moment. Rule 2. Keep your keycard on you at all times. If you lose your keycard, do not attempt to leave the premises until morning. Remain in a well-lit area and wait for help. I never thought a keycard could be so important. But on my 4th night, I set mine on a supply cart. I was reorganizing my cleaning solution bottles, and I must have knocked the card onto the floor. By the time I realized it was missing, I had no idea where it went. Feeling foolish, I searched everywhere for nearly 2 hours. At around 1 a.m., I tried to ignore a growing sense of panic. Without that keycard, I couldn't access half the facility's doors or exit gates. I wandered into a hallway I rarely visited, thinking maybe I'd left it there. The lights were dimmer than normal, and the walls gave off faint, static-like sounds. It felt as if the building itself was breathing. I eventually found the card on the floor near an elevator, exactly where I was sure I had not been. As soon as I picked it up, the overhead lights brightened and the static in the air vanished. Since that night, my keycard never leaves my pocket. I've come to believe that the facility is more than just a building, and it might target those who cannot leave when they should. Rule 3. Do not clean the 4th floor before midnight. The 4th floor is restricted until 12 a.m. Attempting to enter earlier may lead to disorientation. This rule confounded me at first because, to my knowledge, the facility had only 3 above-ground levels. So what was the 4th floor? I soon found out. During my 5th night, I got curious and took the main elevator, scanning the keypad. To my surprise, a 4 button was hidden behind a small metal cover that flipped open with a simple latch. I pressed it. The elevator shuddered, then rose higher than it should have. When the doors opened, I saw a dim corridor lined with unmarked doors. A sign overhead read Level 4, but it was half broken. My stomach knotted as I stepped forward. I only managed a few yards before an overwhelming sense of dizziness struck me. The hallway seemed to warp, the corners curving inward like a mirror maze. Light flickered from overhead fixtures, and a static hush pressed against my ears. My instincts screamed to leave. I rushed back to the elevator. As soon as the door shut, relief flooded me. The next day, Dr. Fowler offered a hint. He told me that if I ever had to enter the 4th floor, it must be after midnight. Something about time alignment. Now I obey that instruction. If I must clean that level, I wait until the clock reads 12 a.m. sharp. After midnight, the hallway doesn't warp. It's still disquieting, but at least it doesn't bend and twist like a living creature. Rule 4. Avoid looking at your reflection. After 2 a.m., reflections may display discrepancies. If you notice one, do not linger. I first witnessed this phenomenon on my initial night, but I had no idea it was part of a larger pattern. The booklet stated that reflections in windows, mirrors, or even polished floors can become unreliable in the early hours of the morning. Perhaps it's something about the facility's location or the research being done here. One night, I was finishing my rounds on the 2nd floor near a glass wall that overlooked the main courtyard. It was about 2:30 a.m. As I turned off a row of overhead lights, I glanced at the glass and caught sight of my reflection. Except it wasn't a perfect reflection. While I stood still, it took one step forward. It tilted its head, as if listening for something. That was enough for me. Heart pounding, I shut my eyes and turned away. By the time I dared to glance back, the reflection was gone. I don't know what happens if you stare too long. Frankly, I don't want to find out. Now, anytime the clock edges past 2 a.m., I resist the urge to check a mirror or window. The less I see, the better. Rule 5. If you hear a whisper in an empty room, do not respond. Close the door, move on, and log the incident. This may sound straightforward, but it's surprisingly difficult. When you hear a whisper, especially one that seems to say your name, it's instinctive to answer. The first time I heard it, I was in a storage closet restocking paper towels. The voice was faint and low, but it clearly said, "Lewis." I spun around, but no one was there. A second voice, softer yet urgent, followed. "Come here." My heart was racing and my palms were sweaty, but I remembered the rule. I forced myself to remain silent. I quietly backed away, shut the door, and walked down the hallway as fast as I could. My mind reeled. Was I imagining it? Possibly. But the instructions said not to respond, so that's what I did. Over the next few nights, I heard different whispers in different areas. A bathroom stall, a utility corridor, even once beneath a desk, always in places that should have been empty. Each time I fought the urge to call out. So far I've resisted. I have no idea what would happen if I answered, but deep down, I suspect it would not be good. Rule 6. If the basement lights flicker twice, return to ground level immediately. Do not remain in the basement if you experience double flicker events. Wait 15 minutes before returning. Early on, I thought this rule was just about electrical issues. The basement has older wiring, and we do have occasional power surges. But one night, I was cleaning the drain in a large utility room when the lights flickered twice in rapid succession. I didn't think much of it at first, just an annoying glitch. As I continued, I saw movement at the far edge of the room, near a large hatch in the wall that led to who knows where. The shape was vague, but humanoid. It was tall, and it seemed to drift rather than walk. I froze. A loud hum filled the air, like an electrical buzz. The figure glided closer, and a cold dread settled over me. My mind screamed, "Get out!" I dashed up the nearest staircase. By the time I made it to the ground floor, my heart was pounding, and my clothes were drenched in sweat. After 15 minutes of pacing in the lobby, I ventured back downstairs with a flashlight in hand. There was nothing there, just a silent hallway, bright lights, and a half-cleaned drain. Since then, I take the double flicker very seriously. When it happens, I leave immediately. Rule 7. Log any unusual incidents in the observation book. Do not skip this step. The facility requires a record of anomalies for staff protection. In the janitor's closet on the first floor, there is a black binder labeled Observation Book. After my shift, I'm expected to write down any odd occurrences. At first, I was hesitant. It felt strange to record things like, saw a reflection that didn't match my movements. But the rule book insisted, so I've been faithful about it. Interestingly, other staff members must be doing the same, because I see entries from different handwriting. Most are short. Heard voices in Laboratory 2B, or reflections in hallway mirror at 2:40 a.m. No one signs their name. It's always anonymous, but it's clear these experiences are common. Once, I saw a note that read, "Basement anomaly sighting, large silhouette near the hatch." That sounded eerily similar to what I witnessed. I have a suspicion the higher-ups are studying these entries like data points in a bigger experiment. It's as if we, the janitors, the night staff, are unwitting participants. But for now, I follow orders. I record every incident meticulously before I leave. If it helps keep me safe, then I have no complaints. Rule 8. Always exit through the main lobby before sunrise. Never remain in the building once morning staff arrives. The building's structure recalibrates with the incoming shift. It sounds bizarre. The building's structure recalibrates. But I've learned not to question it. My shift ends at 6 a.m. on most days. Management says day staff arrives around 6:30 a.m. And by then, the layout of certain corridors apparently reverts to some daytime configuration. I have no desire to be inside during that transition. One morning, I lingered an extra 15 minutes because I was behind on my cleaning routine. Big mistake. As 6:15 a.m. approached, I noticed subtle changes. Certain doors seemed closer together. A corridor felt shorter than usual. Worse, one of the labs I'd already cleaned appeared to be in disarray again, as though night never happened. Realizing I was about to overstay, I raced to the main lobby. By the time I got there, the overhead announcements began. "Morning staff, please proceed to security check." The second I stepped outside, I felt the building's hum dissipate. The day shift employees walked in, greeting each other casually, as if nothing was amiss. I didn't explain the shape-shifting phenomenon. I just went home, took a long shower, and tried to forget the entire experience. Now, I always leave before the sun rises. Following these 8 rules has kept me safe, so far. I still wonder about the strange events I've witnessed. Is the building really alive? Or are the anomalies caused by whatever the facility is researching? The more I think about it, the more I suspect that each rule is a carefully crafted response to the side effects of their experiments. The illusions, the whispered voices, the strange reflections, they might be the byproduct of some technology that warps our perception of reality. Dr. Fowler never directly answers my questions. Whenever I hint at odd occurrences, He nods and says, "Just follow the rules." The only time he offered a crumb of insight was the day after I foolishly visited the 4th floor before midnight. He told me that the facility synchronizes with external factors, as if it exists on a slightly different frequency than ordinary places. That's all I ever got from him. As the nights pass, I can't shake the sense that something is watching me. The facility has endless cameras, yes, but it feels deeper than that. Corridors sometimes stretch in the corners of my vision. Doors appear where they shouldn't. And late at night, I swear I hear footsteps pacing along the upper floors, where no one else should be. Each time I feel that dread creeping in, I recall the rules. They act like guardrails, guiding me through a labyrinth of shadows. Part of me wants to quit, to turn in my keycard and run far away. But there's another part that's strangely fascinated by this place. I can't help but wonder what lies behind those unmarked doors, what powers the subtle transformations, and how the staff can remain so calm about it all. Sometimes I suspect they know I'm curious. After all, they monitor me with those cameras. If that's the case, maybe they need me to be afraid. Maybe the fear I feel is exactly what their work requires. I try not to dwell on it. If you ever find yourself employed here, remember these 8 rules. They are your lifeline in a building that seems to defy logic. It's not just about keeping floors clean or making sure the trash is out. It's about surviving until sunrise. The facility does not care about your intentions, only that you fulfill your role without disrupting whatever secrets it holds. So each night, armed with a mop and a set of carefully memorized instructions, I walk those quiet corridors. My footsteps echo in empty hallways, my heart pounding in sync with that faint hum that resonates through the walls. I remind myself, sweep from bottom to top. Keep your keycard safe. Don't look at reflections after 2 a.m. over and over, like a mantra. Because in this place, following those rules might be the only thing standing between me and whatever waits in the darkness. I will continue to log my observations in that black binder, leaving behind small notes about whispers and reflections for the next person who finds this job. Perhaps they'll read my notes and realize what they've gotten themselves into. Perhaps they'll decide that knowledge is power. Or maybe they'll just do what I did, follow the rules, cling to routine, and hope the facility doesn't notice them lingering a moment too long in front of a warped reflection. Because here, following the rules is survival, and trust me, you want to survive. Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, please hit that like button and subscribe for more eerie creepypastas. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.